Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are finally talking about surface ship versus submarine interaction after having played quite a bit of ranked battles over the past couple of days. And well, I gotta say, this ranked battle season is truly special, because the teams are quite special, at least the ones I've been getting. Granted, I played a lot on the first day, and that day's normally quite a mess, because everyone, despite their ranked, is normally nice and mixed up and all together, so you've got some crazy teams going on. So how this video is going to go, I wrote down a couple of notes during my session of playing with submarines. Well, playing against them in a surface ship. And we're going to go through that right now. I'm going to share my thoughts on each aspect of it, and then I'll give you guys a nice little wrap up there at the end. So let's go ahead and get rolling. So we're going to start with the good first, start on a positive note. So, my first observation was that subs are exceptionally frail when they get caught in the open, as they should be. It's a trade-off for having the ability to be one of the sneakiest classes in the game. But anytime these guys get caught out in the open, especially when surfaced, they barely make it through a salvo or two from anything, really. Even if you're a battleship with AP loaded, the changes were made, I think, a little while ago, where AP shells now have an area of damage effect around their splashes in the water when firing at submarines. So it's kind of like HE. It's not as large as HE from my understanding, but it still happens, meaning you don't have to hit right on the subs for your AP shells to do damage to them. So you can quite easily send them to the shadow realm with your main battery guns, not even thinking about your secondary guns on top of that. Oh, by the way, there will be footage playing in the background, and I played through the couple of days of ranked with the Arizona, the Tier 6 American Premium Battleship. I chose her for ranked because she's got 12 14-inch guns, quite the heavy broadside, and they are quite accurate for Tier 6 guns, especially with the amount that you get. My other choice would probably be Warspite for playing in this go-round of ranked. And plus, the Arizona gets the ASW aircraft, which is very important. I'm getting to that here in a moment. But anyway, yeah, when submarines are caught in the open or even underwater, they take damage, heavy damage when they're surface, even below the water too. People will easily dogpile these things with their ASW aircraft or destroyers or cruisers with their depth charges, and it doesn't really take much to sink these things. Speaking of ASW aircraft, the ASW aircraft is very, very useful in dealing consistent damage to subs, or force them to dive deep, which in turn limits their vision and forces them to burn their dive time. And it's quite easy to use once you get the hang of it. They work just like the Dutch air CVs, the Dutch, not yet, but the way we're going, who knows? The Dutch cruisers airstrikes, it's literally the same interface and everything, and the planes arrive quite quickly, especially when you drop them close to your ship. And it's quite easy to use, and it's quite easy to do consistent damage with these depth charges to the subs, or force them to submerge. Each round, when I use the airstrikes with the Arizona, I would find myself getting at least 2 depth charge hits on these subs, which is around 4,000 damage, or these guys would be forced to dive down to their maximum operating depth of, I think, like 40 meters at Tier 6, which at that point, they can't see anything at that depth. So they're completely blind at that point, just trying to stay alive. And they'll still take damage at that depth, be it a lot less damage than if they were shallower, but their burning dive time down there, they're still detected by you, so now their dive time's being burned at twice the rate. So it really is a trade-off for them. Do they want to stay shallow and hope that you're the only one around with depth charges, or do they want to dive deep and cut their losses but be stuck down there for at least a solid minute or 2 minutes? Which, at the pace that ranked battles is going, is a good chunk of the match. But of course, in random battles, that's not as much of the match, but it still forces them to make that decision. So they're either stuck down there away from you, where they can't hit you, where they can't even see you, or they're going to eat a lot of damage. And what was really surprising to me, and this came as a huge surprise playing the Arizona, it's quite easy to dodge and manipulate the torpedo homing system, like really easy, especially if you just sit back and use your brain for a moment. So there should be a couple clips that you'll see throughout this video where I do this quite easily. So one time I was being pushed by a warspite, and I believe it was a cachalot that was hunting me. That was hunting me, and he pinged me. But since it was just a warspite, after me, I didn't really need to hold my damage con. So what I did was I waited a little while, kept sailing in the direction that I was sailing in, and then once I thought his torpedoes were on the way, because you get notified of where the ping's coming from, and it even highlights the part of your ship that's been pinged. So you know where it's coming from and what part of your ship it's going for. And plus you get a countdown timer of when that ping's going to wear off, so you have a pretty good idea of around the time that the torpedoes are going to get there. So I waited a little while, I waited till almost this ping was gone, popped my damage con, and then I changed my direction. And lo and behold, the torpedoes missed by a mile. Now, of course, too, you're not always going to be in that situation. You might have 2 or 3 ships around, you might have been set on fire a couple of times, and your damage con isn't going to be available. And that's okay, because if they're pinging your bow or your stern, now, of course, this is very dependent upon your situation, it's really easy to dodge these torpedoes. That genuinely surprised me. Considering I'm in the Arizona, ship that goes, it's cursed by being American and being a dreadnought, so it can't go faster than like 22 knots with a speed flag. I thought I was going to get absolutely eviscerated. Now, granted, the Arizona does benefit from the tighter turning circle of the American low-tier BBs, but it's hardly a DD or a cruiser in terms of maneuverability. Like, yes, it's got a tighter turning circle, but it's still... She's slow. So... what I did here, and I'm not sure exactly where this clip's going to show up, but I was pushing the middle cap by almost myself. I had a Grefspee behind me, and our submarine, which was, I believe, a cachalot, was also keeping his distance because he was almost dead. And there's this one submarine. He's just pinging the ever-living crap out of me. And he gets the double ping that gets the improved homing and the citadel damage if he hits my citadel. So I thought it was going to be pretty bad, but these torpedoes are detected from 2 kilometers out now. So I see them, and since the torpedoes are going after the bow of my ship, I simply turn, and the torpedoes have, well, a lot of trouble trying to hit the bow of my ship, because the torpedoes really want to hit that part of your ship. But even with the improved homing of the double ping, they still struggle to do it if you maneuver at the right time. And you can see there too, they do try to turn to keep up with me, but they simply can't because the bow of your ship swings over so fast. Now, maybe if they're targeting the midsection of the ship, sure, they might have had a better chance of hitting me, and they eventually do. He does manage to get I think 2 torp hits on me out of a salvo of 4 with the double ping going on, simply because I couldn't maneuver. And in this case, I was being targeted by at least 2 other ships too. So this was kind of a worst case scenario. But again, if you're used to dodging normal torpedoes, it's not terribly difficult. You just have to be a pretty seasoned player. Well, not even that seasoned, but just be pretty experienced with predicting where torpedoes are coming from when you're being shadowed by DDs. It's pretty much the same thing, but now you're being told where they're coming from and what part of the ship they're aiming for, so you have a bit of a warning as to what they're going for, so you potentially can dodge them quite easily. So that's the good. The bad now. Now there's less points for bad, but the bad is it's pretty bad. So the first and my biggest issue is that not every ship has ASW equipment. This is a massive issue for me. And I don't understand why they don't give every ship ASW equipment. So my logic is that every single ship has some form of AA, except for pre-World War I ships or some World War I ships. That's understandable. That's just historically accurate. But even some of those ships, like the Viribus Unitas, it has like 2 AA guns. Same for Dreadnought. It has something to contribute to shooting down planes. Why can't every ship have ASW equipment? It doesn't make sense. It needs to happen, and it's quite stupid, in my opinion, that not every ship has at least one ASW plane charge, and that causes problems later down the road. So, number 2, the damage con consumable gets rid of homing, which, back in the early days of testing, it was explained that when you activate a double ping on a ship, you are thus activating magnetic torpedoes that explode beneath the keel of the ship and therefore deal citadel damage. Now, torpedoes exploding beneath the keel of the ship is quite accurate to later submarines, like I believe the 50s and the 60s, when magnetic fuses on torpedoes became more, well, a thing. I do believe there were some magnetic torpedoes during World War II, but it was very, very late war. But anyway, that is how it works in real life today. The torpedoes are supposed to explode beneath the keel of the ship, which has just a tremendous effect on the ship. I'll play a clip here of I think it's from like REMPAC 2016, when they did some target practice against, I believe, an Oliver Hazard Perry DD. And you can see when the torpedo explodes beneath the ship first off gets lifted up in the air by the explosion. And then that explosion beneath the ship makes a vacuum where there's nothing. So guess what? All the weight of the ship is now pinpointed on that one spot because there's nothing underneath the ship to support the weight. So the ship comes crashing down in that vacuum with all the weight of the ship pinpointed on that one spot, and that usually breaks the keel of the ship, which is kind of important because that's the backbone of the ship, and now it's broken. So now you have a ship that's pretty much in two pieces, which is not very well akin to the ship continuing to float, although this particular Arleigh Burke does seem to not go down without a fight. So yeah, I understand why that would be considered citadel damage, because it is a tremendous effect. However, it being in a World War II, well, I don't think you can really call high tier in this game World War II era anymore, but that's another video for another day. So I can understand why that's citadel damage. But damage con getting rid of homing? Since they said they were magnetic torpedoes, I assume that they're going for an effect called degaussing here, with damage con getting rid of the homing pings. So degaussing was a real method used during World War II, where there was this device on board. I'm not sure how it exactly worked. It's a lot of science and such, but it would change the magnetic signature of the ship's hull to be that of the water around it. It was mostly used when passing through minefields, not really against homing torpedoes or magnetic torpedoes, to my knowledge and to my research. So I think that's what they're trying to emulate here, which makes sense. You activate the degaussing, your ship now has the same magnetic signature of the water around it, so therefore the magnetic fuses are no more, and the torpedoes are now just good old contact fuses. Okay, makes sense, but why is it on damage con? Damage con is so important to battleships. It stops flooding, it stops fires, especially with the amount of HE we have at higher tier. It's so important to stopping fires. So let's say you've got a full salvo of a Balau's torpedoes coming at you, and you goofed up and they've got your side, and you can't maneuver. Either you can't maneuver because you goofed up, or you can't maneuver because you got like 2 or 3 ships in front of you and the Balau managed to sneak around to your side. Good on the Balau for getting in that position, getting that shot off. However, you're about to eat like 30,000 something damage and citadel damage. I don't like that, so I pop damage con. Okay, now you're going to die to the 3 ships in front of you because of HE span fires. And I get it, you can't be an invincible battleship, but boy, does that suck. Is that a choice to make? And people complain about CVs being able to create instant crossfires. In this situation, yes, the submarine did get in that position, but 50,000 damage and citadel damage. Like, oh man, in one go, like that doesn't happen every day in the game. Unless something shows you broadside and you manage to get a lucky shot off with a battleship. So this, in my opinion, really needs to be its own consumable. You can give people like 3 charges of it a game, and I think it'd be fine. You get 3 chances to negate that citadel damage, and then after that, it's gone. And it's historical, makes sense, so I think that should be added in as a consumable. I think that would solve this issue of just placing so much more importance on damage con. Alright, so going back to point 1, that not every ship has ASW equipment. This leads to a really big issue and a really awkward situation where if there isn't a surface ship left that has ASW equipment, and there's one one submarine left, that's really awkward. So either the game's going to last an eternity while this submarine either runs from the enemy team and tries to recharge its dive capacity, and then it's able to dive again and just either run for the team more or slowly manage to kill everybody because there's no ASW equipment left on the friendly team, or they just sit there and wait for the match to end, which is kind of awkward. And yes, I know I've complained about matches being incredibly short in the past before, but that's because the team folds in 2 minutes, not because there's one ship left that's just running around. So that's another throwback to point one, where every ship needs some form of ASW equipment, and I'm not really sure why some do and some don't. They haven't really explained, to my knowledge, either way, but it just doesn't make sense in my opinion, and needs to change. The last point is that there's less action on the surface now with the submarines being in the game. They take up the spot of 2 ships. Now, granted, recently, at high tier at least, DDs don't really last that long. So having 2 ships on a team that you're not going to see on the surface may not make up that big of an issue, but at the end of the day, it's still less ships on the surface fighting each other. And plus, there's less damage to be had in the games now, so average damage is going to go down, which is unfortunate. And I like surface action better than subsurface action with the submarines. Like, submarines versus submarine battles are incredibly fun for the 2 submarine players, but everyone else is just sitting there just watching them, like, just sail around each other in circles. So that's the last big issue for me. And these 4 big issues, in my opinion, do kind of overshine the 5 good things that we started off the game with. And I think if they get these last 4 things down, from my point of view at least, I think we'll be in a much better situation with submarines. So lastly, a non-issue that I've seen brought up a lot is that submarines have the potential to just hide from the enemy team if they're all that's left at the end of the game. And I did mention that, but that was more into terms of they're hiding below the surface and no one can touch them because no one has ASW equipment. But DDs do this too, all the time, and cruisers do too. Battleships are the only guys that really have a hard go of it, but battleships do this too. It happens all the time when you're the last teammate alive on the friendly team and you have the points advantage, and all you need to do is run and hide. Every class can do this. Submarines are just really good at it, but I mean, I don't see how that's an issue in and of itself because everybody does it. So yeah, that's a non-issue to me. That's the only non-issue I had, but it's something that I've seen commented quite frequently, that they're very good at hiding when they're the last ship alive on the enemy team, and you need to kill them to win, and the enemy team has a points advantage. But, well, again, everyone does that. That's the logical thing to do in that situation. So that's my thoughts on surface ship versus submarines interaction. And keep in mind, this is just at tier 6, and this is just on the first night of random battles in the 7v7 format. So it's not going to be extremely similar to 12v12 when the matches can last a bit longer and we can see what late game submarine play is really like. This is just my initial first impressions of playing against real humans in this iteration of the submarine test. Do keep in mind too, this is still all in testing. This isn't like the final variant of the submarines that will be coming to the game. This is still testing, so these can and probably will change. So keep that in mind. Alright guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you have a wonderful Friday. I will be live streaming right here tonight on the channel from 5 p.m. U.S. Central Time to 8 p.m. U.S. Central Time, and I will be on Twitch as well. So please make sure to come out and join us for that. We'll probably be playing quite a bit of ranked to see how submarines are doing on the 3rd night of ranked battles. But anyway, guys, hope to see you here tonight. Again, hope you guys are having a wonderful Friday. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.